So Rocco, thank you, first and foremost for joining me today. We're trying to bring awareness around the issue of human trafficking and, you sharing your knowledge and expertise on this really important topic is really helpful. So thank you.
You're
And I
welcome.
want to just, confirm again that you consent to, having this discussion, going through this recording, right?
Yes, I do.
All right, great. So, just to kind of recap, throughout the month of January, PAAR, our agency, also known as Pittsburgh Action Against Rape, we're sharing a series of discussions called PAAR Talks on social media, where we meet with local experts and survivors and providers, just to talk about, human trafficking and how it impacts our community. So for today's PAR Talk, I'm with you, Rocco Magnelli from Corporate Security and Investigations, right? Also known as CSI.
Correct.
Okay. So Rocco, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, your job, how it relates to anti-human trafficking efforts in
Uh,
Pittsburgh and the area?
yes, I can. Here, at Corporate Security and Investigation (CSI), um, we we actually handled youth. We handle CYF investigations. We
Hmm.
began with doing runaway investigations. We've been contracted with Allegheny County Children, Youth, and Families since 2014. In the last couple 2 years, we've been involved, and we now do their trafficking investigations and
Hmm.
sexually exploited children cases. Uh, so we work in coordination with the Attorney General's task force. So we have a lot of good partners together with the FBI, Homeland Security, Attorney General's office, and we coordinate all our efforts together to work on these victims of trafficking. I work mainly with youth victims, and as the cases are sent out, they're reviewed, and we take action on what needs to be done.
Okay. So you said you work mainly with youth victims. So what are some red flags that you see, in victims and survivors that you work with that show that someone may be a victim of trafficking?
Well, typically, some basic symptom or things that we'll see is a child being controlled, being controlled by an older adult, um, not necessarily always family. Excuse me.
Hmm.
Um, it could be physical control or psychological control, and sometimes a child's not always able to be their own person. They're not free to do as they want. They're not free to leave from school or leave from home. Um, and they're not able to share things about themselves. A lot of times you also see a little bit of fear,
Hmm.
as if they want to speak up and can't. They don't know how. And and then a lot of times when they're with other individuals, they don't speak for themselves, or other individuals don't allow them to speak for themselves, and they'll take over a conversation, or they'll supply the answers for these
Hmm.
children.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so you touched on also kind of who the traffickers are. You talked about how they may control what some of the youth are talking about or what they say and what they don't say. So, what are some other warning signs that you see in the field that, may indicate to you that someone's a trafficker?
Well, there's some basic signs that we do a lot of trainings with CYF and all the surrounding services. And some of the basic things that we see very common with a lot is children having things that they typically wouldn't have, like a large amounts of money,
Mhm.
constantly presenting themselves with new items, new clothes about themselves, new shoes, um, a consistent changes in their features, their hair, their nails being done, things that typically a child, a youth, in teens and very young teens wouldn't normally be doing on their own. And quite frankly, you would find that most parents wouldn't be actually doing all these things for the children.
Mhm. Okay. All right. And so I guess when it comes to services and supports, what do you typically connect victims and survivors to in Allegheny County when it comes to that, services and supports?
One of our, it all depends on the investigation and the victim itself when we make our approach. In most cases, we're the very first rapport for that victim. We
Hmm.
develop that rapport with the victim, and then as we begin our interview process and getting to know the child or the youth, we determine things as they're needed. One of our first contacts is usually with PAAR, with yourselves, and because there is some type of trauma, and at the very beginning stages, we want to try and identify where the child is, or the victim is themselves, and a lot of times they're not even aware, and they're still they have a lot of fear, because that's a very common that's a common sign you'll see in a lot of the victims, and they have a fear of opening up and expressing themselves. So we
Okay.
do like to reach out to PAR and many other services that are connected, usually around trauma. We like to use a lot of trauma therapies and so forth with most of our victims.
Okay.
We have we have numerous places. We use places in Pittsburgh, Child's Place, in with Mercy, that we bring our victims to, and they immediately start working with the the trauma and the therapy of the child.
Okay. So you guys, not only do you kind of find the kids, work a lot with CYF and law enforcement, FBI, you also work with providers in the community like PAR and other resources to help with what, like housing or counseling, things like that. Okay.
Yes, we do, and most recently too, we've been getting involved because of the task force. They, of course, not only deal with the youth, they deal with the whole population of trafficking
Hmm.
victims and so forth. And we're recently involved with, we've been getting involved with a lot of the adult victims. And we find many similarities. It's just the differences in age. But we have some different resources that we can use when it comes to adults. And ourselves at CSI, we've been reaching out and been very cooperative with a couple agencies that Garden Ministries, which is
Hmm.
can be looked up on the internet, and also new to our area is Refuge for Women. They're a nationwide organization. They have 6 shelters and housing places across the United States already. And I'm real happy to say, for the Pittsburgh area, we're in the process right now of assisting them and locating an emergency shelter here in Pittsburgh for us, and which is definitely needed. An emergency shelter is needed because these victims, one of the things a fear a victim has is they have no place to go. Many victims want out of this situation that they're in, and they realize it, but they have no one to go to and no way out. A lot of times they feel that they themselves are in trouble of some sort, and which they're not. And because these victims are manipulated in so many different ways by these individuals,
Hmm.
meaning the traffickers. So once they see that they have a light, they're provided with a way out. You see a lot of relief come over them, and they can begin to open up a lot. So having an emergency housing is very key for any victims, male or female, in trafficking, because it gives them an immediate time that they can feel some relief, and it
Hmm.
gives them time to start working on themselves to see where they're at. And I'm talking in that first couple of days to a week. It gives them that time to realize that they don't have to be where they were. And then from the emergency shelters, there's numerous, through Garden Ministries and through Refuge for Women. We have all the services and everything available for these individuals. And a lot of them don't have anything when they're separated from that trafficker. Uh, they're on their own. They have no
Hmm.
possessions. They have no money. They have nothing. And we're able to provide all that with our services, and including what you do at PAAR.
Nice. So you guys are kind of like that first, like warm contact that, makes them kind of feel secure that, you're not in trouble. We're just trying to make it so that you're safe, you know?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
exactly. And I do want to point out that no matter where this goes, because we are one of the first contacts, and when I say we, I speak on behalf of, we have some excellent partners with the FBI, Homeland Security, and these people are passionate in what they do. And I want everyone to know that it's not about always the legal aspect of it. Of course, we try to build something because we want to get these traffickers off the street. But
Mhm.
as far as the victim, that's our first contact, and we stay with that victim, no matter what investigator or whoever makes the initial contact. We stay with that victim throughout their placement, wherever they go throughout the whole case, because that initial bond is usually something that stays. So whether a case actually gets prosecuted or gets to that point, and some unfortunately may not,
Mhm.
we never leave that victim, because that victim needs to know that everything we've done for them is not about something else. It is truly about the victim, because there's so many out there that we don't even realize what we're seeing.
Okay. And that, I mean, you mentioned, like I said, a lot of supports and services, some local, some international. Um, I guess because you also mentioned housing as kind of one challenge for people. They don't have much, when they're leaving a trafficking situation. So, what are some other challenges or barriers, that you see in victims and survivors when they're trying to get help?
Well, one of the biggest barriers is housing in general,
Mm-hmm.
which is, there's a lot of emergency shelters out there, and Pittsburgh, we are pretty fortunate. We do have emergency shelters, but victims of trafficking is not your normal person that doesn't have a home,
Mm-hmm.
that has no place to go. They actually don't have any place to go. They've been victimized, they've been used, and they've been manipulated to a point that they lose themselves, a feeling of themselves. And to put for them to be housed in just an overnight shelter, it just doesn't justify what they've been through. And so the biggest barrier is this housing, and and that's why this emergency shelter, which I'm really happy that Refuge for Women is trying to set this right in Pittsburgh, is going to be very important, because once you identify a victim, one of their biggest hurdles is actually coming with you and being able to take that step, because most of these victims have been trapped in this lifestyle for so long that
Mm-hmm.
they know no other means, and they've never been able to get out because of the manipulation. So it's very important to be able to have something to offer them immediately, when
Mm-hmm.
they are located.
Yeah. And I remember you saying like they just don't know where to turn first, So that helps that you guys kind of help them in figuring that piece out, where to go for
Yeah,
support.
it is hard for anyone in that situation to reach out, and that's why, and I thank uh, everyone at PAR, and everyone in the organizations. It's becoming a light the last year, 2 years, that put a light on this situation with trafficking, because there has been nowhere for anyone to turn, and
Hmm.
it hasn't been understood.
Yeah. Okay. So where do you typically see trafficking happening in Allegheny County?
That's a good question, and because the best answer I can give you is everywhere.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think there's one set area, and it does come as a surprise to many people. There's not one set area where you can find trafficking. Trafficking, trafficking is not something you just see on the street corner. It's not that type of thing. Um, it's something that happens right in our backyards. It happens in our neighbor's home. It happens in neighborhoods. east, west, anywhere you turn and look, there could be a victim of trafficking. And interestingly enough, that's how we find these victims, because we find them everywhere, in every lifestyle. So there is no single area that is above the other.
Yeah. That's probably why, it's good to kind of know about the red flags, of what a victim or survivor might look like, because you could come across them anywhere.
Yeah, that is important. And we do get people that'll notice a couple that I had mentioned. There's quite a few, and we're always available to talk with anyone that can reach out to us, and we'll help. And that's one of the biggest things I always tell people: if you're unsure, pick up the phone and call. It's better to talk for a little bit on the phone and explain than to just overlook and let something go. Because one of the most common things that we see out in public is someone that's being controlled. And we as people in society, we just want to go our own way and just keep and continue going, and not recognize that person that's maybe being bullied, to use that word, or being controlled. And that control is not only physical, but it can be psychological. And a lot of times victims aren't even given the time to speak for themselves. That other individual with them, if they're constantly answering for them, that's a red flag. Those are some simple red flags that are right in front of us every day that we don't notice.
Okay. So last but not least, our last question. So what is a common myth about human trafficking that you would like to debunk?
Well, the biggest thing, and since we started getting involved with the trafficking, is as soon as you hear human trafficking, people think of the border and situations in other countries, and which is definitely, it's all a piece of it. But when we talk right here in Pittsburgh about trafficking, and we're talking about sex trafficking and labor trafficking, there are different types, but the warning signs are all the same. But it's not just at the border. It's not the trucks bringing in loads of people. That's not the type of trafficking we're talking about. We're talking about our children right here living next door to us, that are victims. And like I had mentioned before, just right in our neighbors and our backyards and our communities. So it's not something that we're looking for coming into us. It's something that's right in front of us right now. And that's why we want the awareness out there, and to be available for people that have questions, and so we can bring this to the light.
Nice. That's insightful. It's not something that's far away. It's right in our backyards.
It's right here. It truly is right here. And, as in most things, education is the most important thing. And we always want so many different efforts and more efforts, but that beginning piece, so that we're all aware of the same thing, is very key to, attacking.
Definitely. Well, thank you. Thank you again, Rocco, for joining us for this PAAR Talk. I think it was beyond helpful for you to, share your insight with just the community at large. And I hope people, continue to try to learn more and educate themselves on human trafficking and what they can do to help victims and survivors. So thank you again.
Well, you're welcome. And anyone can reach out on those websites if they have questions.
Yes, definitely. Awesome. All right.
Thank you, Shayla.